Hello, National Academy of Hypothyroidism. I'm here to answer some of your Facebook questions. So today we have a question from Natalie Ryan, and she asks, is it common to have a suppressed TSH but normal free T3 and free T4 on NDT or natural desiccated thyroid medication? So let's broaden this out. Is it even normal to have those levels? And then if you're on medication, what happens to those levels? So traditionally in our med school, we learn that TSH is a direct marker of thyroid levels in the body. But if you know from Dr. Holtorf's research, and by the way, it's not that he's done all this new research, it's just he's found the research that has been in the literature for decades now. It's even in our medical textbooks that TSH is not the best marker of hypothyroidism. TSH is the pituitary. Basically, it's an indirect feedback mechanism. How loud does your pituitary have to scream at your thyroid to put out thyroid hormone? When the body is making enough, the TSH goes down. So, especially once we give you medication, because this is Natalie's question, I'm not going into all the reasons why TSH is not the best marker, but once we give you the appropriate level of medication, your TSH will go down, maybe even to suppress levels, and that's fine. It just means that the pituitary has gotten enough thyroid medication and it's not alerted and re-signaling the thyroid. So then what about, really the best levels are to check on your free T4, free T3, and reverse T3 levels. Free T4, we don't have to necessarily have in the optimal ranges. I like to see it low normal, because if it's too high, it's probably not converting very well to the active free T3 levels. Free T3 levels are the levels that go that's the active hormone that goes right into the tissue. It goes into every cell and turns it on and increases your metabolism and the function of that particular cell. So what we want is a good ratio of free T3, which is like putting a foot on the accelerator, to reverse T3, which is like putting a foot on the brakes. We want pretty much a 2-to-1 ratio, so it's really a 0.2 to 1 ratio. So if your free T3 is 3.0, which is a pretty good number, we don't want your reverse T3 higher than 15. So take out the decimal point, we've got 30 to 15. So back again, we don't use TSH as the main marker for assessing tissue and cellular levels of thyroid. What we're most concerned about is free T4, not quite so much, but definitely free T3 to reverse T3. So we're okay if your TSH comes down as long as those levels look like they are optimal. Thanks for your question, Natalie. Okay, our next question is from Mandy McPherson, and she asks, how do I change from levothyroxine, which is T4, that's the generic name for Synthroid, or maybe it's a compounded T4. So how does she change from that to NDT, which is what we're calling natural desiccated thyroid, or ARMOR, or nature thyroid? How does she take it? Should she just take levothyroxine one day and NDT the next? Absolutely not. You have to do this in a very precise way. T4 more or less has about half its value. So T4 100 is about equivalent to T3 50 micrograms, more or less, according to really the updated literature. And then ARMOR, or nature thyroid, or natural desiccated thyroid, those have a certain ratio of T4 to T3. So you really have to have a doctor who knows how to do the math and knows how to figure out the equivalencies. I have so many patients say they were on Synthroid, they switched to ARMOR, and they said, oh, that stuff didn't work for me. When I look at the calculations, it's because they lowered their dose. So you have to do enough ARMOR and enough of that NDT to match whatever dose you were on. So I'm not going to do all the math for you now. If you want to set up a consult with me, I could do that with you, but you really have to have a doctor who knows how to do this. Because I don't know if you're switching from one to the other, we have to make sure they're the same, not that you're going one day the levothyroxine with too much armor, or one day levothyroxine with not enough. So you've really got to know your math, but basically T4 has about half the value of the T3, and you can kind of figure out some of the numbers that way. But again, you need a doctor who knows how to do this for you. Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Melissa M. Patterson, and she asks, she said she recently read that taking levothyroxine at bedtime instead of the morning might be better. She's been taking her meds for several years, always in the morning. What are your thoughts on this? So with levothyroxine, that's T4, it has a long half-life, meaning it stays in the body for a longer period of time. So theoretically, if you're taking it every day, once you've been on it for several weeks or months, you could even skip your dose one day and it wouldn't even affect your blood levels, because the levels from the prior dose are still in your body. So in general, on a T4, in its nature, it's actually sustained release because it'll stay in the body for about a week. So it really shouldn't matter that much whether you take it morning or night once you've been on it. Initially, though, with thyroid medication, we always have you take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Wait about an hour before you eat your food so that it's appropriately absorbed, and then appropriately the conversion from the T4 to T3 happens optimally. Some people, so we usually don't suggest you take it at nighttime because it might give you a little boost in your metabolism and energy, but it usually doesn't with T4. But to play it safe, we always say take your thyroid meds first thing in the morning for best absorption and best conversion. Okay, thank you. Okay, our last question today is from Christy McCarley. She says she keeps reading that you shouldn't start thyroid meds if your adrenals aren't healthy. What are the symptoms? What are the dangers of this? She said her adrenal function was never checked before starting her Levoxyl, which again is T4. Should she be worried? And she's on Armour now. So I like the fact she's on Armour. Really, a good T4, T3 combo is almost always better than the T4. Or sometimes we add in a sustained release T3 with your T4 or by itself. But she wants to know about this whole compatibility with your adrenal function. The way I like to think of it is that your thyroid is a little bit like having oil in the tank. Remember, thyroid hormone, it goes into the nucleus of every cell in the body and turns it on. If you don't have enough thyroid, then the body tries to conserve energy, and it makes you tired, fatigued. You can't fight off colds and flus. You get all those symptoms we know about: cold hands, cold feet, hair loss, dry skin, constipation, depression, brain fog. Your body is basically, out of survival, saying, conserve energy, shut down. So when we don't have enough thyroid, then what happens? We have to use our adrenals to get by every day. So we increase our cortisol to raise our blood sugar, to combat stress, and to get us out of bed and to focus on our lives. So I liken the adrenals to having gas in the tank. So the thyroid is like the oil in the tank. And if you don't have enough oil, we keep burning through the gas. It's a little bit this analogy of kind of this. Adrenals are more that short-lived energy, whereas the thyroid is this longer sustained energy. So which do you treat first? I like to treat them both at the same time. I actually think I prefer to treat our thyroid first, or at the same time. Often if we just treat the adrenals, we're not really getting at that deeper source of the problem. The adrenals are not as fragile as we think they are. Most people's levels will jump back. It's really just checking whether you produce enough cortisol under stress in order to combat the stressors of the day, in order to combat infections. But we really need thyroid for every cell in the body. So the symptoms of low thyroid and low adrenals is just this unrelenting fatigue, which you've probably been getting if you're hypothyroid. Sometimes we get a little bit of hypercortisol, and that's that low fatigue, but it's also that wired and tired feeling. So you're tired all day long, then at night you get a burst of energy and can't sleep. Sometimes that's because your cortisol has shot up again in the evening to try to get you through. So that needs to be adjusted. Usually some supplements can lower that evening cortisol to kind of get you sleeping. Again, we do have to restore sleep in order to get everything else working as well. So I like to work on them both. Pretty much if you're going to optimize your health, you have to look at all these systems of the body. So we've got thyroid, we've got our adrenals, we've got our hormones. We have to look at our digestion. We have to look at our immune function. We have to really treat all of these if you want to get optimal health. But thyroid is the key. Thanks a lot.